Yes, it's Friday. Yes, we are a few days late, but that doesn't matter because we have a hell of a show. I'm in celebration mode. I know some people out there are bemoaning the fact that we're not getting a shake as a sugar daddy at Old Trafford. But I'm here for Sir Jim, and I think it's a very optimistic time, despite what's happening on the pitch at Old Trafford, to be a Manchester United fan. In Sir Jim we trust. We don't even like those blue lot over there at the Etihad. We're going to be ran by a Mancunian. When's the last time a Manchester club was ran by a Mancunian?
I think 1878.
So it's a few years. And before we get into any of this amazing chat that we're going to have, pressure's on you now, we'd like you to subscribe, please. We're getting towards Christmas. We set the goal of hitting 10,000 subs. We're like 250 off it. So if you're watching, I don't know where you are. I don't know who you are. But if you don't subscribe, I'm going to be very upset.
Oh, we don't want to see you upset, do we, Sunshine? Me and you spoke about the ownership several times on this channel. And there was the kind of feeling that it needs something drastic to change at Manchester United in terms of the ownership, but it doesn't have to be a state-owned ownership. No. There is a pathway to United being successful without it being owned by a state. Now, people might say that Sheikh Jassim wasn't the state, he was an individual, but let's be honest, he was obviously going to use the money from the Qatari state fund or whatever it's called, which was the Qatar itself. I think his granddad was the prime minister or one of the founders of the country. It was very heavily sort of tied to the state, and it did sort of leave a bit of a sour taste in my mouth because it felt like the very thing we've criticised City and more recently Newcastle for being state funded. Nothing against Qatar. I don't know a lot about that country. I have not a problem with Qatar, the country itself. I didn't want any state to own us. I won't be owned by Britain or America or any other country in the world, to be honest with you. I didn't want us to be state-owned. This is different. It's going to be Sir Jim Ratcliffe. There are flaws with Sir Jim Ratcliffe's ownership. I don't think he's perfect, and I don't think you can get a perfect billionaire. But this was a better option for me than being state-owned. The big question now, though, is what does it look like? And if we can ask two questions, is he going to deliver? Because he's obviously got a lot of ambition. The issue is putting that into practice, isn't it?
We've been run since Ferguson left by an accountant now, isn't it? Richard Arnold. He was a former accountant. That was his last job.
Yeah.
Am I right saying? A banker in Ed Woodward. These two.
A what? A banker. Okay.
I wouldn't say anything slanderous like wanker.
No,
like that.
We won't call him that on this channel. Better than that.
Dickhead wanker.
Not bad.
Yeah.
No, we don't call people names.
No.
Because names are bad names.
Yeah. God, I don't know where you were going with that one, right? Anyway, you completely threw me off with your amazing banter.
What is it? It's nicknames, isn't it? What is it, Alexi? Nicknames are... What bad? You know what I'm on about? The Office.
Yeah, it's The Office.
Its nicknames are bad names, something like that. You know what I mean? You've not seen it?
Are we talking about The Office?
Yeah.
Oh, Manchester United's Office.
Nicknames are bad names.
Thank you. That was what I was getting at. Nicknames are bad names. Why am I Mr. Toad?
See, that made me laugh. If you'd have nailed it,
sorry, I got half the quote.
The point I'm trying to make is that United have been floating around between 7th and 2nd, being ran by people who do not have any expertise in football. What I hope is going to happen, and from all accounts and what I'm reading from reports, is that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is going to come in and run the football side of Manchester United, and it's not like he's getting in people like, is it Jean-Claude Blanc?
Yep.
Also Paul Mitchell, who are football people. So if you think about it, the problem has never been at Manchester United about not having money. So this is why we didn't need Sheikh Jassim or any of the billions. Manchester United are, by and large, the biggest club in Britain, if not the world, for what we can create ourselves, our own money. It's just that the money has been spent very, very badly. Now, if we can have the money that we are actually generating and put that into players with, or a manager with a strategy towards the future and build something, I think that that's a massively, there's lots of potential there. I'm usually a pessimistic, and anyone who watches this show, I can be really cynical and don't shy away from that, but I'm actually really optimistic about what this could be if it's run right. And let's have it right. It's been run really, really wrong. So it can only get better from here. So I'm all here for Sir Jim. He's putting his own money into the club. I think Joe mentioned it earlier on Stretford Paddock. He's been here, 12 hours or whatever. Is it got signed off now, has it?
No, not yet. It's with the latest stories were it was going to be next week. That looks like it might be a touch ambitious and it might be in the next few weeks. But apparently he's going to invest an initial investment that's going to go towards the infrastructure of around 365 million. And then there could be up to 2 billion, I think, of his own money going in.
That's his own money.
Yeah.
You know what
I'm going to get in some of the comments before I come back to you because loads of people commenting. Santa Notch is here. Mick Holohan says, hey, lads, no Roy Carroll in your worst team, Jay. I'm shocked. We did a sort of biggest flop 11 on Paddock earlier. Yeah, there was a lot of contenders in the goalkeeping position. Brian Casey, UK Strains, Aaron, Nick Bolton, Santa Notch says, half a mark off for the blue attire. # Manchester is red. Apologies.
1968. That's all I'm going to say. 1968. You should
Come on,
know
Notch.
more.
Notch, you know that better than anyone. Talk MU, good to see you there. Jay's Park says, evening Jay, evening David. Lovely to see you both. David. Oh, yeah. Dave Bell says, it's jar blank for short. Yeah, I like what you're saying, Scotty, about the fact that it's not just us not spending money. We do spend money. We spend more on transfers than almost anyone else. It's the misspending that we've done. You know, we spent what 1 point. I'm just looking here. Producer Alexis pulled up stats. Since I think Fergie retired, we've spent a net spend of 1.182 billion. I mean, for all that, we've won 4 trophies. We haven't won a league title. We haven't won a Champions League. We haven't been past the quarterfinals in the Champions League. We haven't been within 6 points of a title, I don't think, or even I think it's about 9 points of a title. So that's just not enough. That's not good enough. Now, you might say, okay, we needed to spend more, even though that's a lot, because where we're at, we need to spend more. We didn't. I think when you look at teams like Manchester City, and to a lesser degree Liverpool, it's not just the amount of money they spend, because those teams have spent money. It's they have a structure in place. They have a sort of system whereby the manager is supported properly, transfers come in that can work under the next manager even. It isn't all this short-term thinking. When City bought Raheem Sterling and Kevin De Bruyne, they bought those players before Guardiola came because they knew they were going to get Pep Guardiola. When Liverpool was scouting Mo Salah, they knew that was a player that could play under Jurgen Klopp. It wasn't Jurgen Klopp that went to Liverpool and said, get me Mo Salah.
No.
The club or the scouting department went, we've got a player who fits perfectly with your ethos, with your style of play. And also there was a progression from someone like Brendan Rodgers to Jurgen Klopp, where you could see it was a similar sort of style. Jurgen Klopp was obviously just took it to another level, took it in a forward direction. There's a progression there where you go, okay, let's get Manuel Pellegrini in short term. He can bring us some success. Longer term, we want Pep Guardiola, and if we back him with the right transfers, we'll have success. That's what we've seen at these clubs. At United, it's been shambolic. It's been, let's bring in David Moyes, give him a 6-year contract, not really back him in the transfer market, sack him after 8.5 months. Let's bring in Louis van Gaal, he's an experienced head, back him with all these transfers, then we'll get rid of him after 2 years. Let's bring in Jose Mourinho, he gets rid of after the Louis van Gaal transfers, he wants his own transfers, we back him for a bit, then we don't back him when he finishes, second, we buy Fred, we buy Delot, we buy a third choice goalkeeper, then we sack him shortly afterwards, then Ole Gunnar Solskjaer comes in, we'll back him for a little bit, he'll get rid of all the Jose players, then we'll sack him and we'll bring in a new manager. It's a nonsense. We need a proper structure in place, and the likes of Dave Brailsford and Paul Mitchell look like they have enough knowledge around running a club or running a brand, if you want to say, a sporting brand or whatever, that it can be a success. I'm not saying it will be, but it looks like we're making the right decisions.
Well, if you like you said there, 4 trophies won. I think net spend 1.1 billion, and that's with people who don't know how to run a football club. That's what we've got. So you'd think, on that logic, if we're still going to have somewhere in that range of money to spend, even maybe more, if Sir Jim Ratcliffe is going to be putting 2 billion into Manchester United, it can only get better because we've got people who know how to run a football club. And we're talking on the live last night on Stretford Paddock. A lot of people, when Sir Jim Ratcliffe was first mentioned this time last year, because it's about a year since this Glazers thing was announced, isn't it?
Yeah.
And everyone's saying, well, Sir Jim Ratcliffe's not done much with Nice. They're currently top of the French league now, so he's obviously made an improvement in them. And people have said that he's 71 years of age. How long is he going to be around for? And yes, that is a concern. But also you could flip it around and say, right, okay, maybe Sir Jim Ratcliffe is 71 and wants to leave a real legacy. Why would you not have all that money and think, you know what, I could be the man that takes Manchester United be the phoenix from the flames for Old Trafford and Manchester United. Why is that not a possibility? It really is. And then there's other people saying, well, it's only 25%, and what about the debt? The debt is horrendous, and it was a horrible way for the Glazers to be able to buy Manchester United. Nobody is disagreeing with that. But the debt hasn't stopped us spending £1.1 billion over the last 10 years. It's just been spent really badly. And I can only have a handful of players that I think were worth anywhere near the fees. And this is 1.1 billion minus the wages, because we've been paying well over the odds on salary. And that isn't like your likes of Liverpool and City don't pay as much money as Manchester United. Like Alexis Sanchez, Jesus.
Yeah.
The lottery he won when we signed him that January. Like how many players have been worth it under that 1.1 billion? Zlatan loan.
Yeah.
Herrera.
Bruno
Martinez.
Yeah, I'd say so. I know it's only been a season, but I'd definitely say Martinez. But you're talking about, I don't know how many players we've gone through.
I think we've had 63 players since Ferguson left.
Right, and you can name a handful that you can say have been a success or have been worth it out of a 10-year period and 1.18 billion spent. Just on the Paul Mitchell front as well. A lot of people might not know too much about him. We've got another video coming out in the morning on Stretford Paddock, so you can go and check that out when that's out, I think 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. But the reason his stock is so high and people rate him is he's had success almost everywhere he's been. Well, everywhere he's been, as a sort of, forgive that big bang there, I don't know what's going on. So he went to Milton Keynes Dons, and I think he was head of recruitment. He's had success there. He was most notably responsible for signing Alan Smith, who's played for United, of course. Then went to Southampton, and he was part of that Southampton team or the club that had success. He joined in 2012 in January when they were in the Championship. They got promoted, and he began working with Pochettino, and he oversaw the signing of players, including Nathaniel Klein, Yoshida, Gazaniga, and Stephen Davis. He then went with Poch to Spurs, where he helped the club buy players such as Dele Alli, who I know it didn't work out eventually, but it was a very successful signing. I think they paid £1 million.
Compared to where Dele Alli came from as well.
They paid £1 million from him from MK Dons,
yeah.
and he got 5 very good seasons out of him, or 4 very good seasons out of him. Heung-min Son, who's the current captain, top scorer and their best player. Kieran Trippier and Toby Alderweireld, very successful there. I think he had a bit of a fallout with Daniel Levy in the end because Levy stopped spending money or stopped letting him spend money. He then went to Leipzig, RB Leipzig. Again, successful there. Has been touted with a move to United for the last few years. And most recently was at Monaco as their sporting director and had success there as well. So he's had success at every club he's been at. He obviously knows football. He knows the transfer market. He's got contacts.
Yeah.
You need someone who can come into a club and not just know which players to get and work with the manager to get them or the scouting department, but have the contacts to get those players. To be able to get on the phone and speak to someone at, I don't know, anywhere, you know what I mean, like Lille or Milan or wherever, Strasbourg, and just go, look, you've got a young kid there we're interested in, rather than someone who comes in and who might be a bit of a name or might have worked their way up the ranks at Old Trafford and Manchester United, but hasn't worked at any other club where they've built up a network of contacts, where they've built up relationships. When you've got someone like Paul Mitchell, I'm not going to get carried away here, but you look at his record, it speaks for itself. He might be that guy that can sort of, when you're looking at a player, can go, right, I know someone at that club, or I know what they would take for that player. I know what their limit is. I know whether we can get him. If we can't get him, if you're not willing to pay that, then there's another player of a similar ilk we can go for, and it's you work with the manager that way, rather than just going, we want Jadon Sancho. Dortmund aren't going to sell him unless we give him 100 million. If we wait a year, we can get him for 75 million. All right, let's wait a year, and then we end up spending 75 million quid on him and giving him a 350k a week contract for a player that, when the manager looked at him, said he preferred playing on the left, but we're going to use him on the right.
That's one example. You can look at the Frankie de Jong scenario where we chased him around Europe all summer and ended up coming back and having to pay well over the odds for Casemiro due to our bad negotiation skills. You can use the same thing when you're looking at the Antony situation. We were going to sell. Ajax were going to sell earlier on in the summer, weren't they, for like 40 million, and we've ended up spending nearly double that for a player that I don't think deserves to be anywhere near a Manchester United shirt. And you go back and back and back all the way through the signings, beginning with Fellaini under Moyes. That's somewhere where we were chasing Fabregas. The Fabregas under Moyes is very similar to Ten Hag and Frankie de Jong, players that didn't want to come to Old Trafford, yet Manchester United, due to their lack of nous in the transfer market, just decided that, oh yeah, well, somebody's told us that he's interested. And then that comedy when they were trying to sign, was it Herrera, and they sent the Men in Black over to get him.
But apparently it wasn't even people that were affiliated with the club, was it? There was this thing about people had gone over to negotiate for the signing of Ander Herrera, and they didn't represent United. I don't know what they were doing and what they thought. Like me and you just rocking up, yeah, we'll negotiate. I think they thought they could maybe make the deal happen and then contact United and go, we can get this deal. Yeah, but it was nonsense. You know, one big thing as well that we need to look at and needs to improve at Manchester United, it's not just signing players, it's selling players. Our player sales since Sir Alex Ferguson, even before Sir Alex Ferguson retired, to be fair, have been shocking. Like, if you look at the biggest transfers we've got, the biggest transfers we've received for players we've sold, some of them you would not believe some of the players that are in the top 10. Who do you think, for starters? Let's see if you can work out. We're going to get involved there. Who do you think we got the most money for as a transfer? Like the biggest fee we received for a player?
Di Maria?
No. Alexa?
Lukaku.
Cristiano Ronaldo, the first time round. That was in season 9-10. That was 2009 we sold him on it.
Okay.
Yeah? So that was 14 years ago. The next one, who said Lukaku?
Me.
Yeah. We sold Lukaku for 74 million euros. That was a loss, though, because we bought him for, I think, 80 million quid. You said Di Maria, didn't you?
Yeah.
We sold him for 63 million euros. Again, that was a loss, though, because we bought him for, I think, 69 or around the 70 million pound mark. The fourth highest sale we've ever received for a player was David Beckham in 2004, or 2003, sorry, for 37 million euros. 20 years ago. Wow. 20 years ago. And also, 37 million euros ain't that much for a player. Like, for a club like Manchester United. You think we'd be selling loads of players for things like that. Henrik Mkhitaryan is fifth, 34 million. Dan James, right, who we got 29 million euros for, is United's sixth biggest ever sale. That's Dan James.
Where is he now?
He went to Leeds, didn't he? And then he was on loan at Fulham. I'm not sure whether
he's at Leeds again now.
Is he back at Leeds? Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Like, how bad we are at selling players. Like, Veron is our 9th biggest ever sale. That was 2003 for 21 million euros.
That's 20 years ago.
Yeah. Like, we don't get good money for players.
But that's because we buy so badly, isn't it? I mean, Manchester United has become sort of the place where people's careers come to die.
Yeah.
Or come, it's a bit like a swan song, isn't it?
Yeah.
A bit like a retirement home. If you look at, I think we were talking about last night, Varane's more than likely going to go in the summer. Casemiro's coming towards the end of his career. Imagine he'd be leaving in the end of the summer. You go to Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Paul Pogba, whilst he probably shouldn't have been the end of his career, what's happening at Juventus and stuff, he's not gone on to greater things. And it always reminds me of that heritage quote that Jose Mourinho did. Do you know when he's talking about this is football heritage? And he's looking at the players that have come from City. And that's the point you were making before when Mourinho walked into Manchester United. He was taking over a Van Gaal team of a load of players that were well past their date. Like Schweinsteiger. Whereas when you look at the team that Pep Guardiola took over at Manchester City, it was all players that were on the up and up and were increasing in value as their career progressed on. You look at this, when Pellegrini took over from Mancini, they went out in that window, Manchester City, and I think if memory serves, they bought Jovetic, they bought Negredo, neither of which worked out, but they also bought Fernandinho in that window, who is genuinely, and I take no pleasure in saying this, one of the best signings we've seen in the Premier League. Like, he was vital to them winning three titles, I think it was. He really was. He was just what they needed in that DM role. And he did such a good job for him for so many years. And it's so annoying because they basically had a plan. They brought in a few players. They were able to sort of weather the storm of one or two of them not working out. Yeah. Because amongst that, you had someone who was genuinely world class. And at United, we've never done that. We've never had a window where you go, we bought 3 or 4 players and like 2 of them or one of them has been amazing.
I think the best we've done in terms of transfer, like you mentioned it, last season Martinez, the signings we made, looks like someone who's a very good signing. A few years ago, Bruno, in the January when we bought him, was a very good signing. Other than that, Zlatan, as a short-term signing, did very well. There's not many.
No.
There isn't.
But we seem to be doing it back to front in the way that Man City have done it. Hopefully, with the way this is done, is because when Man City were taken over, yes, a load of money's been injected into how they can afford players or the infrastructure of the club. But they won't be anywhere near as successful. Their managers underneath it. Like, I think Pep Guardiola, for as much as I like to throw shade at Manchester City, is one of the greatest coaches of all time. You can't deny it. But I don't think that he could thrive at that club if he didn't have the Bergsteins behind him at Man City. And look at Mancini before him. Pellegrini's not an amazing coach, but because he was working at a club that knew how to sort of provide players for him, he was a success at Manchester City.
Do you know what the mad thing is as well? I agree with everything you've just said. If you look at United's record signings, the biggest fees we've paid, right, out of the top, we'll go down to 11, out of the top 11 players that we've paid money for, that we've spent money on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of them are still at the club. 8 of them are still at the club. Where are we at the minute in the Premier League? We're struggling. Like, we're not a successful team at the minute, and you have still got 8 of our biggest ever transfers, like the top 11 biggest ever transfers, are still at the club. You could even go a bit further, like down to 13. It's like 9 out of 13 or whatever. Like, some of these players, like Anthony Martial, 60 million euros. What's happening with him? Is he going to can't do anything for United? Jadon Sancho, 85 million euros, around 70 million quid. Is he going to do anything for us? Is he a player that you think, he'll come good? No, I think he'll never play for Manchester United again. I'd be very surprised if he does. I think the only way he does is if the manager gets sacked. Anthony, and Ten Hag's got to take responsibility for this one, because he's one of his signings. He's our second biggest ever signing. And if everyone's fit, I wouldn't even play him.
No.
Like, the transfer policy at United has been shambolic. It really has. And if you can throw in there Harry Maguire, I know he's having a bit of a renaissance, massively overpaid for him, 80 million quid, just ridiculous. Mason Mount, another recent signing, even that's beginning to look a bit questionable.
But this is the thing why
Casemiro as well, you mentioned.
Yeah. When people say, oh well, if we'd have got Sheikh Jassim and we would have had countless billions of pounds and been able to buy everyone we want. What Manchester United have been over the last 10 years, to paraphrase the Beatles, is that money can't always buy you success, because we fucking spent it. Do you know what I mean? Because we've spent over £1 billion and got 2 League Cups, an FA Cup and a Europa League to show for it.
No, it's 100%. Someone makes a really good point here when it comes to struggling to sell players. Adam says, Jay, because they're all on stupid wages. It's true, they are. Like, Jadon Sancho is one of the highest paid players in the world. He's not just going to walk away from that contract. You're going to have to find someone who either eats up that wage, who gives him his 350k a week, what he's already on, or you're going to have to pay some of his wages if you want to move him on, because you're not just going to be able to get rid of him that easily. It's like when we sold Alexis Sanchez to Inter, we loaned him. We were paying half his wages.
Yeah.
We were paying him to play for someone else. And we were doing that about a year after he'd signed for us. It wasn't even that long after he'd signed for us. It's ridiculous the amount of wages we throw and the money we throw at certain players, both as transfer fees and as wages as well. It's just, it's almost like we're aiming for failure. Like, we're doing things that make it impossible to have success. If you start giving players who are relatively unproven in some cases as well, huge contracts, or the other thing we do as well, if someone has a good spell, I remember Nemanja Matic having 3 good games or whatever it was, or not a bit, I'm being a bit harsh, had like a sort of 6-week spell where he was really good for United. He's 31 years old, we gave him a 3-year contract.
Yeah.
Like, why? Why have you done that? It just makes zero sense. Like, sometimes I get it. I get it when you've got a young player and you're going to lose him and you think, right, we need to keep hold of him, he's done well, give him a deal. But other times, it's like, we just hand out these contracts. Delo is another one who recently signed, I think, a big deal at United. Now he's done okay for Erik Ten Hag, but we give him like big money, a long-term deal, and now people are looking at it going, was that a mistake?
Yeah.
Because is he even up to it? Alexi, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking earlier, because obviously you two both mentioned City, and in about 3 or 4 years, they signed Silva, Toure, Aguero and company. just off the top of my head, that's Fernandinho as well. You said about him.
Yeah, I rate him.
All of them, right, are kind of like some of the best players that have ever played in the Premier League, and that some of them were there with them for 10 years and brought them success for 10 years. We've not signed, I wouldn't even say really, we've signed maybe one player that has had anywhere near that impact in 10, 15 years. When did we last sign a player? Probably Van Persie, but he was there for a year. When did we last sign a player who went on to have success with us for 10 years? It would have to be way back with Fergie, so it would probably have to be Vidic or Evra or someone like that, or Carrick. It's probably Carrick. That's the one that springs to mind. But it's just crazy that, other clubs seem to get it right with players, and we just get it wrong every time. We had that window where we signed Varane, Ronaldo and Sancho, and that's just like playing FIFA. We all could have bought those players.
Yeah.
You just go and
That's
buy.
a great point. Yeah. Because do you remember the Aaron Wan-Bissaka one, where they said we had a list of 1,000 right backs or something ridiculous. Right, for starters, there's probably about 1,000 right backs in world football. So your list is basically everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone was on our list, right? And we whittled it down so we got to the best one, which was Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Also, if you'd have stopped someone in the street and asked them who should United buy for right back, they'd have probably said Aaron Wan-Bissaka. He was that kid at Palace that had the man of the match performance against us. Go and get him. You don't need to have a list of 1,000 and whittle it down to go and get the most obvious one. And then the third thing is where you exacerbate it. I like Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Crystal Palace said we want 50 million quid for him. And United said, don't be stupid. He's had one good season. We're not paying 50 million quid or 1.5 good seasons. And Crystal Palace went, all right, you're not having him. So we now, right, well, let's negotiate. Okay, yeah. We spent 2 weeks, and at the end of it, we give him 50 million quid. Leicester City is another one. Jose Mourinho says, I want Harry Maguire. United say no. 50 million quid or 45 million quid, you're not having Harry Maguire. You've had Victor Lindelof the year before. That's your defence. That's sorted. You're not getting another defender, which is insane.
Yeah.
To a man who just finished second in the league and he needed a centre-back and you didn't give him one. So he spat his dummy out, started playing under Herrera and Scott McTominay in a back three, just burnt the village down in order to save it. So he wanted Harry, no. When Ollie comes in, I want Harry Maguire. Harry Maguire, who just signed a new deal at Leicester not long after Jose wanted him to make his transfer fee even bigger. And had so many good games for England as well, so his stock was as high as it's ever going to get in the World Cup. 80 million quid. United are like, that's preposterous. We're not going to spend 80 million quid on someone who's never kicked a ball in the Champions League. What are you on about? Unless they say, right, you're not having him. So, all right, let's negotiate. We negotiate for 2 weeks, and at the end of it, we pay 80 million quid. It's insane. There has to be a point. City wanted Cucurella, and I'm sorry to go on about City because I hate a lot of what they stand for and still facing 115 charges, so let's not act like they're a great example of how you should run a football club, but they do get a lot right. City wanted Cucurella from Brighton, sorry. Brighton say, right, you can have him, he's going to be 50 odd million or whatever. City go, 40 million's our limit, or 38 million, or whatever it was, is our limit. So Brighton say, well, you're not having him then. So City say, right, fine, we'll walk away. Chelsea buy him, and he's a bit of a disaster for him.
Like Harry Kane as well. They did the Harry Kane. They walked away from the Harry Kane deal.
They walked away from Maguire. They wanted Maguire at one point. They were looking at Fred. I think Fred was a target for them. Pogba was another one. Sanchez, where they'll go, no, we've got a limit.
Can you imagine a parallel universe where Sanchez, Pogba, Maguire, and Fred signed for Man City?
Do you know what, bro? I used to cover City back in the day, and they were linked with Sanchez. And I remember sitting in that press conference and chatting to the journalists, and every one of them agreed, right, that Sanchez was going to City. It was a done deal. This was in during the season leading up to that January transfer window. Everyone was saying Sanchez is going to be the next signing here. He's the one they want. He's happy to come. Arsenal have had enough of him. He's beginning to spit his dummy out. He's causing problems for him. They want rid of him. City going to pay the wages for him, get the money for him. Got the money for him, obviously. It's going to happen. United come in, right, and they go, right, how much is City going to give him? Right, we'll give him more. We'll give them Mkhitaryan. We'll get this deal over the line. City went, right, okay, have him. Who was our other target? Laporte. We'll buy Laporte. I think they bought him and he was going to come in the summer. That's our other target. We'll focus on him. We'll get him. Laporte comes in, does a good job for him. Player that I know he's not always, set the world light, but he's been a useful player for him. They walk away from the Sanchez deal. We end up with Sanchez on 500k a week, whatever he's on. which then upsets everyone because it's like Pogba and De Gea and everyone else is going, why is this guy coming into the team and he's the top earner? Just absolutely wrecks the way structure at United. And what does he do for it? A good game against Yeovil, did all right when we beat him at the Etihad. Other than that, a waste of space. There's got to be some limits and structure at your club. And I think we saw reports, didn't we, that Jim Ratcliffe, when he went on a tour of Carrington, or he did his meeting with them all, he questioned the Casemiro signing. He said £70 million in a 4-year deal with another year added on, potentially, for a 30-year-old is insane.
And the thing is, the timing of when he said that was interesting, because wasn't in that far into the season where Casemiro could be deemed having one of his greatest seasons. It's off the back of Casemiro being one of United's better players, and he's still pointing the finger at Casemiro being the wrong sort of signing. Him pointing that out is what you've just said then, what all fans have been saying for ages. So everything that we've sort of said tonight about what the Glazers have been doing wrong is why we look at this today, this news where Sir Jim's going to be coming in the next couple of weeks, as massively positive. And I don't care for anybody out there that's still got a Qatar flag on the Twitter handle. Just stop it, lads. Just just stop. It can only be a positive thing. It can only be a positive thing.
Yeah, I mean, listen. There's a lot to moan about Manchester United, and I'm not saying that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is going to be the saviour of United. I'm not saying that Paul Mitchell is going to sign or scout or have a list of all these great players that are going to make us win titles and win Champions League. I'm not saying that Dave Brailsford and the other kid, Jean-Claude Blanc, that's the key.
His pedigree is good as well.
Yeah, it is. I'm not saying it's all going to be guaranteed success, but it makes sense. Looking at it now, this looks so much better than Ed Woodward Googling who's the best striker or who's the best midfielder and then going, right, okay, Pogba, we'll get him 89 million quid. Oh, Lukaku, get him 80 million quid. Oh, Di Maria, get him 70 million quid. And also doing signings or getting signings when the manager's like, I don't want him. Like, did Ole Gunnar Solskjaer want Donny van de Beek? Did he want him? Was he a target for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? Did he have a place for him in his team? No. So what happens is you get a player who comes in for 35 million, who everyone was raving about what a bargain that was and how wonderful it is because we've got a Ballon d'Or nominee who's just got to the Champions League semi-final and all the rest of it and how great he is and he's perfect and all this other nonsense. He comes into the team, he barely gets a kick of the ball, the manager doesn't want him, it's just a waste of a transfer. It just is. It's the same with Fred under Jose. I know you love Fred and I get it. And I think
Jose.
Yeah. Jose didn't want Fred. And you know how we know he didn't want him? Because he said so. He told us. We lost to Juve at Old Trafford with Fred sat on the bench and Jose after the game says, I looked at my bench and I've got no one. What? You've got a £50 million midfielder you've just bought. That's him saying, I didn't want him.
It's not my player.
Like, you cannot operate a football club like that. And I actually think the way we've been operating, Jose might have had a point where he said finishing second was one of his best ever achievements. Because it's actually a miracle we've won anything in the last 10 years.
Oh, mate, it really, really is. And people who sort of say that Jose Mourinho was toxic for Manchester United, I think it was the other way around. Obviously, he burnt his bridges towards the end of his career, but if there was a time and a manager that we should have been backing someone, it was when we finished second that year, and we didn't support him at all. Alexi, can you put like a poll in saying, see what people think, whether Ratcliffe's going to be a good thing or a bad thing? What are the comments saying?
NC says, LMAO, love the MJ McDonald's reference. Jay, if you're doing it, stop it. Stop. Get some help. Good to see you got that. Adam says, Jim Ratcliffe will be the second richest owner in the Premier League after Newcastle. DB Cooper says, I be down with Jimmy Rats. I think that's short for Jimmy Ratcliffe. Or so some people call him Rat because they were angry with him. We put a poll in there. Please do get involved in that as well. David Campbell says Jose was great at United, 3 trophies. He's obviously counting that Community Shield, the charity shield that Jose did. It's like when you look at that summer when we finished second City. We finished 19 points behind Manchester City, right? So yes, we finished second, and 81 points was a decent return. You've won league titles on that in the past, but we were a distant second to Manchester City. City go out and they buy Riyad Mahrez for what was their transfer record at the time. They improve. We go out and we buy Diogo Dalot, who, 5 years later, the jury's still out on. Lee Grant, which a third-choice goalkeeper makes absolutely no difference in a title race whatsoever, so let's not even bother with that one. And Fred, who, whether you love Fred or not, the manager did not want. it's insane. That is not a way of catching Manchester City. That is not even trying to. What that is saying to me as a fan is, we just want more top four. That's what we want.
When you look at that, like, that really isn't a surprise, because you could look at the when we saw Ronaldo, and this is during Ferguson's time. We replaced Ronaldo with Valencia, Michael Owen, Obertan?
Yeah.
Like,
and also don't forget, the summer we lost Ronaldo, we lost Tevez.
Yeah.
Like, we lost two of arguably our best ever attackers. Like, Tevez was mint, let's not.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So towards that time could have been seen like the decline of the Manchester United, because if you look at the teams of that Ferguson had, he was pretty much getting blood out of a stone. A lot of them players in his final season were coming towards the end of their career, weren't they? I know Van Persie was amazing, but what was he, 31 that year? I think Vidic was 33, Ferdinand about the same age.
There was an aging team there, like you say, and the most important appointment we ever made was post-Fergie. You had to get it right, like you're saying, and you know, to get it so wrong, to take such a punt on a manager whose only trophy had been the League One.
Yeah.
I think it was the playoffs or the Winners' Trophy, whatever. Was insane.
But I don't think. Sorry to interrupt. I don't think that Moyes would have been such a bad appointment had he had a better structure around him. Because don't forget, when Moyes came in, Woodward came in as well at the same sort of time.
That's a fair point.
So I'm not saying Moyes would have been brilliant at Manchester United. I'm not saying any of our managers, but for all their flaws, I think a lot of them were boxing with one hand tied behind their back, because they were being given players or working with clowns upstairs who had no idea about football. Van Gaal said it himself when he was advising Ten Hag about taking the Manchester United job. If he wants a football job, I'd go somewhere else, because that's a commercial club, because that's what their priorities on. And that's what a lot of the managers are working with them. And they all had their faults, they all had their flaws, and none of them were perfect. But I don't think they were able to show their best side. And I was critical of all of them, maybe except for Jose Mourinho, all of them. But they, you know, we've got to give them some sort of credit that they weren't sort of given all the best tools from the powers above.
Well, that's why Jose lost the plot, because he couldn't challenge City without going big in the transfer window that summer. He knew that.
Yeah.
He's not stupid. He knew that the only way he was going to make up that 19-point deficit and catch a Pep Guardiola Manchester City side.
That's already 20 points ahead of him.
Yeah, was to go out and go big and get him the players he wanted and get him the defender he wanted, get him the midfielder he wanted, get him the attacker he wanted. And they didn't. And also, when you've got a club with a proper structure, you're allowed to get it wrong now and again with signings. Some signings, for reasons you cannot predict, do not work out. Pep Guardiola comes into Manchester City, he takes a look at Joe Hart and he goes, he's not the keeper I need. I need a ball-playing goalkeeper. I have had Claudio Bravo at Barcelona. He'll come into this side. He'll be perfect for my sort of the brand of football. The board go, of course. They're getting Claudio Bravo, who was disastrous. He's terrible. Remember that first game against us in the derby where he was so lucky not to get a red card and give away a penalty? He is awful. So the City go, well, you've bought your keeper. You're not having another one. That's your lot. And watch the team struggle. Or do they go, right, okay, this isn't working. Who do you want? And he goes, I want, or they go, we can get you Edison. Yeah, I'll have him. Arguably the best goalkeeper in the world. They bring him in. He helps them win title after title in a Champions League eventually. Even Liverpool, Klopp's got it right and the club have got it right time and time again. But when they do get it wrong, when they have a Loris Karius in goal or whatever, they'll go, well, we need Alisson Becker. Yeah, all right, let's do that then. When they've almost there and they go, we need to go big for a defender, because if we get a defender, that could be the difference between us winning or not winning a big trophy. They'll sanction the signing of Virgil van Dijk. And if they do go out and they buy a midfielder or they buy someone like a Naby Keita who underwhelms, they don't go, well, that's your lot. You're not having any more midfielders. They'll go and get them another one.
No.
So you've got to be prepared to get it wrong now and again. No one can have a 100% hit rate with transfers. Even Fergie didn't. For every, Fergie got like 90% of them right, but there's a few that didn't work out, a few that weren't worth the money, or, do you know what I mean, just weren't up to the job of playing for Manchester United. That's what happens at any club. Any successful club has always had one or two. But what you don't do is when you sign someone and he doesn't work out, you go, well, you're not having another defender. You bought Victor Lindelof, you're not having another one.
Because you could afford to make dud buys if by and large, you're making good buys to carry the bad one.
Nailed
now,
it.
Anthony wouldn't look like such a bad player if he was playing in a team that was, that was made of people who were performing week in, week out. You can carry some players within a team. But at the moment, what's happened under the Glazers, again, we'll go back to the £1.1 billion that's been spent. I think it's 63 players that have been signed post-Ferguson. 4 of them, what's the percentage of that were worth signing? That's before we go into wages. Make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe button as well, please.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap up shortly. Alexi, we've obviously been covering this quite a lot on Paddock, looking at Paul Mitchell, looking at his success, looking at the plans that we think Sir Jim Ratcliffe has. Scotty, for one of the few times, he's full of a bit of optimism. And I don't say that as a criticism because he's got every right to not be optimistic when it comes to Manchester United Football Club. How are you feeling about all this? When you've looked at what you've looked at, you've seen what's gone on, how do you feel?
I mean, it's better. Obviously, it's better than just having the Glazers, but I still think with them being there as majority owners, it's still not the kind of happy ending. I mean, us having kind of basic structure will be nice. Us just being a normal club, us having the same people upstairs that, like Southampton and Brighton have, would be nice, wouldn't it? But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be better, and I think the really good thing will be actually having owners that go, not owners, sorry, but people running the footballing operations who go, right, let's not just go for an obvious signing, let's get this signing who he plays in the Spanish second division, but he's really good and he fits the profile better than bringing back Messi from America, for example. Because if Messi comes available now, the Glazers are going, bring him in. But Ten Hag might go, but I want a defensive midfielder. Like, this literally happened with Solskjaer, where he wanted a holding midfielder. He wanted Declan Rice. And it was so obvious that he needed a defensive midfielder. And the board went, no, you're not having that. And on deadline day, they went, here's Ronaldo. And Ollie was like, okay, right, let's change the way we play. Let's change everything because we've now got Ronaldo. Stuff like that hopefully won't happen anymore. And, people like Richard Arnold will be out of their position who, I know he's popular weirdly with some people, but I think he's just as bad as the rest of them, really. He's in with the Glazers. So, yeah, there's some reason to be optimistic, but I'm very, very sceptical about getting too overexcited because fundamentally the Glazers are still majority owners and, we're yet to see, obviously, what Ratcliffe will actually do.
Great points. Santa Notch says clubs with a proper plan will start the process for signing a player a year or two in advance. We start it a few weeks before, then wait for the banks to loan us the cash. I think sometimes we started a day before with the case of Casemiro, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Also, Brian Casey says football people in the football jobs. Scotty, I'll let you wrap up. Give us your final thoughts on everything that's going on.
In the world? Or just at Old Trafford?
We'll start Old Trafford. You can do the world next week.
All right, thank you very much for that. No, I'm optimistic, and all those people out there that aren't too keen on Sir Jim Ratcliffe. We were never going to get a perfect owner, and we're never going to get a full sale because the Glazers family didn't want it. They couldn't agree with each other, so that was never ever on the table. So there's no point bemoaning something that wasn't available. It's like seeing the girl that you like in the club and you can fancy it, but if she's not going to happen, then you don't whinge about her for 4 weeks afterwards when you've got somebody else who's going to take you on.
Well said. Shanna Van V says, well said, Alexia, what you said as well. And Miles says, having proper structure above the manager means we have 3-4 players in the profile of a Frankie de Jong we can bring in when that falls apart instead of chasing lost causes all window. Just finally as well, on the poll, 69% say Ratcliffe will do well. 31% obviously saying he won't. That is scientific. That means he will.
What do you think? Do you think he's going to be a success or not?
I do, and I'll tell you why. I think Jim Ratcliffe, right, he's had a lot of stick, and everyone turned against him when Sheikh Jassim came in. A lot of people wanted Sheikh Jassim because they thought he's going to do everything.
There's going to be a lot of tweets deleted out.
Yeah. And the thing is, right, we spoke to Kieran Maguire on Paddock 2 years ago, and he said, so Jim Ratcliffe, he's nearly 70, which he was at the time, and now he's 71 now. He isn't thinking about what's going to happen in 10, 15, 20 years from now. He's thinking about his legacy. Thinking about how he's going to be remembered. Yeah. And if he can be remembered as the man that turns around the fortunes of Manchester United, his boyhood club, then he'll be very happy. And I think someone that's gone from a council house in Failsworth to the richest man in Britain has had success, knows how to make success happen, and I think that's what's going to happen at Manchester United.
Yeah, come on, Sir Jim. We're going to both get tattoos if you win the Champions League back to Old Trafford.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, I'll get tattoos all over me if we get the Champions League
Sir
back at Old
Jim,
Trafford.
Sir Jim's face on your chest.
Yeah, why not? I love you, Sir Jim. Look what I've done. I did this for you. Producer Alexi, thank you very much, my brother.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Have a nice Friday.
Yeah, thank you to you as well, Scotty. This has been Scotty and Motty looking at what could potentially be the start of something beautiful. Fingers crossed.
Come on, Jimmy.
Thanks for watching.
Jimmy.